If you think vehicles cost too much these days, well, I tend to agree with you. This is a Ford Bronco. The first thing you want to understand is there's the Ford Bronco, and then there's the Ford Bronco Sport. The regular Bronco, not the Sport, and this is the first edition. It is four-wheel drive. It's an actual truck-based vehicle. It's a full frame with the body on top, bolted on. This is an actual truck frame, and these are made in Michigan. If you were thinking, oh, what about the Ford Bronco Sport? Now, sport sounds like it's sportier, right? Well, in this case, the exact opposite is true. Bronco Sports are made in Mexico, not the greatest place to build cars. You can get different engines, but the base engine is a stinking little 3-cylinder engine. Now, it's turbocharged, but it's a little bitty 3-cylinder engine. They don't offer that in the regular Broncos, and I think it's a good thing they don't. This has a 2.7 liter V6 EcoBoost engine with 2 turbochargers on it. GDI fuel injection. Puts out 335 horsepower. It's a very powerful engine. You're not going to worry about power in this thing. It's not a little bitty 3-cylinder engine that, even with a turbo, isn't as powerful, and of course, it won't last as long. And the regular Bronco, as I said, is a full frame. The Bronco Sport is just one of those dumb unibody things. It's made in Mexico. There is no solid frame. It's all one piece. Ford doesn't call it unibody. They give it some other stupid name, but it's unibody. The whole thing is one piece. There is no actual frame. It's cheaper to make them that way, and actually, they'll get a little bit better gas mileage because they weigh less. But you don't buy a vehicle like this for gas mileage. This thing came from Nashville to Clarksville on a highway. It got about 18 miles a gallon. It's rated at 17. These are not gas miser vehicles, especially one that has four-wheel drive. It is a classic Bronco. It's a big vehicle, got a lot of room inside. There's a bucking Bronco. We'll start it up. And as you can see, it's got all the bells and whistles on it. Here comes the Mustang, and it is a real four-wheel drive vehicle. You can put it in 2 high, 4 low, 4 high. And interestingly enough, this is Ford's 4-wheel automatic system, which is more like an all-wheel drive system, and you can put it in that if you want. And of course, unlike the old Broncos, everything on this is electronic. Got a bunch of power aux you can use for computers and phones, dual climate control. The owner's manual even comes out on this thing. Nobody prints anything these days. Everything is done by computer. Of course, it's got all the controls on the steering wheel, so it's at your fingertip. You don't have to search around for them. And everything's done electronically. Touch buttons, you can disconnect stabilization stuff. And check it out, you push this button here, and it's going to 4x4 shift, and you can lock the differential if you're stuck somewhere in the mud. Another button, and you get trail turn assist in 4 low or 4 high. And you press this button, you can turn the traction control off if you want to drive like a maniac. All that stuff you had to do manually in the old Bronco, get out, locking diffs and stuff, this is all done electronically from inside the cab. As you can see, he wasn't lying. You got 18.4 miles a gallon driving here on the highway. It tells you you got 194 miles to empty if you stay on the highway and get that kind of gas mileage. It even warns you not to leave children in the back seat. Yes, the machines are telling us what to do. It's raining today, but if it wasn't raining, I'd take the top off. So you got a nice topless vehicle here. Really like the back because it's very user-friendly. Look, you can easily get in, and you want to move stuff in and out. Voila! Look at that. You don't have to worry about reaching over a gate or something coming up hitting you in the head. Very well designed for entering and exiting. Of course, since the top comes off, it's got a nice roll bar built in it too. It's a pretty well designed vehicle. And even in the back, you got some power outlets. You can push the seats down, have a lot of carrying space. Or if you're going out in the woods, bringing equipment, you can throw a lot of stuff in here. Now, this might look like a giant kid's toy with these giant Goodyear 17-inch tires and blacked out wheels, but it's certainly not built like a toy. Listen to this thing. That's solid. Even though it's got a removable roof. Airbags all over the place. You got a lot of pull-offs here so you can get power for the kids in the back. And as you can see here, look how easy the seats fold down. Slide. That is easy work. No bolting, unbolting. When you put it back, just slide it back. It's that easy. And that's because they made the front seat have a whole bunch of leeway. Look at this. We'll make it go back. Look how far the travel is. This has a tremendous amount of travel, so you can get things in and out when you need to. And if you happen to be rather short in stature, well, you can pull that seat up real far so you can drive it. For the maniacs running in and out, you can pull yourself in and out real fast. They even have little cargo carriers in the side in case you take the roof off so stuff doesn't blow away. And a nice handhold in the front too. So let's take it for a ride and check it out. Look at the light show this thing puts out. And check out the screen. I don't know what this is, but it looks cool. This is the main screen. What's it doing? Oh, it's building a bucking Bronco. Every time you open the door, you get a little show there, and then you got meteor showers going on here. Hey, I could just sit in this thing and look at it all day long. So let's start this baby up. Quiet as can be. And yes, not only does it have the backup camera, but it's got the side camera, so I won't run into the back of the driveway. And in this case, there's a precipitous drop, and we don't want to fall off of it. I really like this aspect. And they're real cameras, because check it out. Look, there's a piece of paper. Well, there it is outside. Now, of course, you're up in the air in this thing. That's what these things are about. And with that V6 engine with twin turbos, it gets up and goes. There's no arguing that. And yes, it's a 4x4. It is a Bronco. I mean, it steers decently. It's not a racing car. It's too high up in the air. You don't want to overtake those 330 horsepower and flip this thing over. It does have stability control, though. I would not turn it off in this vehicle when I'm driving it. I'd leave it on. Now, this thing was made for going off-road, but I'm not going off-road because it's not my vehicle. It's somebody else's. We'll just take it for a little country drive here. We're coming up to our little drag strip line here that the locals have painted. Let's wait till everybody's out of the way and let's see what this thing can do. On your mark, get set, go. Nice acceleration, smooth shifting, feels really stable on the road too. Now, yeah, it's relatively noisy because it's a four-wheel drive vehicle with giant loud tires that you can drive in the mud. You don't buy these things for silence or gas mileage. You can hear that V6 kick in. Doesn't make the V8 noise, but what the heck, it makes some noise. And considering that it's built on a solid frame, I forecast these things are gonna last a long time. And my grandson just bought an old Ford F100, and that frame was still solid on it. You want something that's going to last a long time, you want a solid frame. Yeah, you're going to get a little bit worse gas mileage, but a vehicle like this, that's four-wheel drive, is going to get relatively weak gas mileage. That's because of aerodynamics, weight, the power. You don't get it for gas mileage. Only thing I don't like is it's got that auto on off and it's turned the engine off while we're waiting for the light. You can't have everything. It transitioned pretty fast. It started the engine up pretty quickly. I didn't really notice much. At least they got those systems so they're not as clunky as they used to be. And of course it's got the modern telling you what the speed limit is, which we just exceeded. It definitely has a very solid feel to it. It does not feel cheap and chintzy because of that full frame. And I really like the front corners of the vehicle. On the left and the right front, you can really stay in your lane and use those as markers. Kind of like flying an old fighter plane, you know? You got something to get a good direction of what you're aiming at. But there it goes again, it shut the engine off. Well, it makes it quieter when you're sitting there. And here we go. You can see the transition is not that bad from no engine to starting it up. Got that system better than it used to be. Although I still don't believe that turning your engine on and off all the time is good for the engine. It's just going to wear things out faster. Solid frame, big engine, all kinds of electronics, automatically locking differentials electronically, so you don't have to get out of the vehicle. Made in Michigan with a full frame. Just don't confuse it with the Ford Bronco Sport. Same name, completely different vehicle. They bought this thing new 3 years ago, and they paid about $21,000. It's got 45,000 miles on it, and they've been happy with it except for one thing. The transmission sometimes shifts a little bit weird. It's pretty much done so since it had 5,000 miles on it. He's taken it back, and supposedly Hyundai has replaced the transmission 3 times, which I kind of doubt. I don't trust those guys as far as you can throw them. It's got a minor shifting problem with them. It often does happen with these, and Hyundai's not a company that's like Lexus, Acura, or even Toyota and Honda. They don't treat their customers all that well. He admits that he was really manhandled by a dealership that didn't treat him right at all. And considering that they told him after putting in 3 trainings, oh, well, they're all like this. I doubt that they put any in. Maybe they tried a little reprogramming with a computer or something like that. But we'll start from square one. It is a Korean car, but see inside the door, it was made in Alabama. All right, okay, there's one strike against it. But at the same time, it's 2019, which is a good thing. Because originally when they were making them there, they had problems with the machines. They made the engines wrong, and the engines blew up. They had to replace tons of engines. That's not the case in this car. We'll open the hood, and look, it's got hood supports, not just one of those dumb little rods. Well, there's a plus. See, it's a GDI engine. We'll take the stupid beauty cover off, throw it away like we always do, so we can see what's going on. Now, this isn't a tiny engine. This is a 2.4 liter four-cylinder engine. It's got enough horsepower, and as you can see, with the GDI, that's a high-pressure fuel pump, it gets good gas mileage. He does get like 38 miles a gallon on the highway. They're made for that. His problem is he doesn't like the way the transmission sometimes shifts a bit funky. Well, we have to get into history for this one. Now, no, it does not have a stupid Nissan Jatco transmission. Hyundai makes almost all their own transmissions now. And this is not a CVT transmission. This is a regular automatic transmission with gears. Like every other modern transmission, you can't check the oil, the dipstick. It's a sealed unit. Transmission makes this whistling sound. Now, it also whines. That was a recording from his phone that he made. Hopefully, it'll make the noise when we take it on a road test, you never know. But they're just saying, oh, that's normal. They normally make it. First thing we're gonna do, hook up my fancy scan tool. In this case, it's hiding behind here. There we go. The magic slot machine is doing its thing. Also updating. These things update a lot. That's what I like about these. And here we go. We know what it is. We want diagnosis. And we know it's a US Sonata with GDI. And you see all the stuff we can check. We're going to do a smart scan. It might take a little while, but we're looking for a real needle in a haystack here. The systems, CAN 1, CAN 2, CAN 3. As you can see, everything is either green or gray. It's all green or gray. Gray means it's not equipped, so everything in it is fine. And this messes with all the transmission control modules too. There's a lot of information we can get. Set the adaptation. We can do all kinds of stuff. I'm interested in the transmission control module. So, read the data stream. Now we're going to select them all. And then we're going to record it all on a road test. Here we go on the road test, and we'll see what happens. We're just going to listen to see if we can hear it. So now we got the data. We can play it back. I can look at all the transmission data. And I like graphs, so let's do them graphs. Graphs are much better. You can see the gears. You can see when they shift. Now the data is perfectly fine, but the little noise that we hear, that's it going into fifth gear. And it's made that noise, he said, basically since he got it. And it really hasn't changed all that much, even though now he's got like 50,000 miles on the car. Now, here's the interesting thing. They took it in and they claim 3 times they replaced the transmission, but they said, all the internals are new, but the shell is still the same. Well, to me, that's a total scam because they probably worried that he get a little engraver or something and somewhere put an X or a notch and say, hey, it's the same transmission. I marked it. And they'll just say, well, your outside shell's the same. The inside's different. Now, they had this thing for 3 months. But at least I do have to give it to the company. They gave him a rental car free. It was one of theirs, new car. He could drive it for 3 months. There was only one problem. If he got any scratches or anything, he was responsible, so he had to be real careful. And he wasn't supposed to drive out of the state of Connecticut, where he's located, so they had to cancel their vacation. Well, that's not too cool, They should have let him go on vacation. Give him another car, give him an older car or something, but whatever. When it came to get it, they said, come back tomorrow, we got to get the paperwork done, blah, blah, blah. The whole time, there was only 15 miles put on the car. Now, it doesn't make this noise when it's cold. It has to be all warmed up. So one, they didn't warm it up all that much. And it was November. When it's colder, it makes more noise when it's warm. Well, use your head. If you got a car that makes a noise like that when it's warmed up, but not until it's warmed up, not when it's cold, there's obviously some type of problem. Granted, it's probably a minor one, but when it warms up, everything is all warmed and seated, and if it makes a noise then, it shows there is wear somewhere that's making that noise when it shifts into 5th gear. And the interesting thing is, if he puts it in sport mode, it never makes the noise. So that tells you that is not normal. The sport mode, of course, makes it stay in RPMs higher, so it has more acceleration, then goes down and lets it go higher. So it obviously has something to do with the pressure pressure that shifts it. This is a regular automatic transmission with regular gears, and they shift by pressure differential. It's the pressure of the fluid that drives the vehicle. So when it's in sport mode, it's going to get higher pressures. It doesn't make the noise. So obviously there's something minor wrong. Like I say, it stayed about the same for me. It works okay, but the fact that they said they changed this automatic transmission 3 times, all the parts inside are new, but the shells, that sounds like total baloney to me. No sense trying to figure the transmission out by looking at it, because they admit the shell is still the same shell. So I've had the same thing happen with other customers, and they pretty much gave them the same line of baloney, because obviously they're worried that someone's going to mark the transmission and say, you didn't change my transmission. Then you could actually sue them under the Fraud Act. But, you know, with them saying, well, the shell's the same, but the insides are all different, which you could never prove one way or another. And the fact that they had it for 3 months, and they only put 15 miles on it, is kind of hilarious. You know, it takes like 12 hours to build the car from scratch. Why would it take 3 months to supposedly fix one? I'm guessing they changed the fluid and filter maybe 2 or 3 times and thought, oh, maybe that'll get rid of that noise that's going through it. But no, it does shift okay. It just makes that funky noise. You buy a new car, you don't want a funky noise. But he's kind of like my age, so he doesn't like really, really loud music. I had a customer in Houston with a BMW. I can't stand that little squeak in the dash. His friend said, just turn the music up, just turn the music up, and then you won't hear it. They didn't make that many of these things. You're going to find out the skinny on them right now. To start out, what's under the hood? Well, it's all covered up with plastic. I wouldn't have done that. This is a Hellcat V8, and you see a big piece under there. That is a gigantic supercharger. And not just any supercharger. It's a 2380cc twin screw supercharger that boosts up to 11 psi. And as you can see over here, puts out 702 horsepower. And this TRX is also a 4x4. Let's just say you're not gonna get stuck in the snow. It's got seriously aggressive tire pattern. And you might think, like I do, how could anybody possibly control all that horsepower at high speeds in a thing that's as boxy as a pickup truck? Well, check out the speedometer. What does it end at? It ends at 120 miles an hour. And you might say, how could all that horsepower only go 120 miles an hour? Well, actually, it's electronically limited to 119 miles an hour. They weren't dumb when they made these things. If this thing went full blast in a pickup truck with all that horsepower, things would be spinning over like tops. People would be going way too fast. It's not a race car. See, it's got tons of clearance. Race cars have no clearance at all. They have to be very aerodynamic so they can have the wind pushing them down to keep them on the road. You don't want to be going 200 miles an hour in a pickup truck. Hence, it's electronically limited to 119 miles an hour, and that's probably a good thing. Speaking of clearance, there's all kinds of working room inside this thing. It's not like it was hard for them to shoehorn this big Hellcat V8 into a pickup truck body. It's a big pickup truck, so it really doesn't have bad working space at all. Though the engine and supercharger is so beautiful, I don't know about this. I would have put a clear plexiglass one on. Now that's part of the air intake system. It's coming from there, from the scoops. This is not for show. The air gets sucked in here. You want to get 702 horsepower, you need a lot of air. And of course, the supercharger, that rams even more air in. When I had the 2013 Shelby Cobra, it had 667 horsepower in the supercharger. It didn't even have a front grille. It just had a big hole like a shark's mouth, because it had to suck so much air because it wasn't speed limited, and it went 202 miles an hour. Now, since this is speed limited to 119 miles an hour, this is plenty enough opening to suck enough air in. That's not a problem. They would have needed a much bigger one if they wouldn't have speed limited, but I mean, really. Can you imagine driving 200 miles an hour in a pickup truck? Unless you're at a racetrack going in a straight line, it would not be a smart thing to do. Now, of course, if you're worried about gas mileage, don't buy one of these things. They eat up a lot of gas. The entire vehicle is made for that power. Let's check underneath. All right. Look at the lower control arm. It is thick. It is strong. You look up, it's got the fancy TRX active terrain dynamic strut system on it. Look at the shock. It's a very interesting system, and it is rock solid. Look at the line that fits these Bilstein shocks. Look at it. This is thick. What's this? It's actually bolted on. This isn't some cheap plastic piece of crap like some of them are, where all the power lines come in and they just snap in, and it's plastic, eventually it cracks. Braided line, solid bolts. This thing is solid built. Now, if you've been watching me for any length of time, you know that I am not a Chrysler, Dodge, Ram fan. This particular truck looks to be an exception to me. And on the TRX, even the four-wheel drive system is fascinating. Okay, you got 702 horsepower. You know what that's going to do to the rear tires? They'd be burnt out all the time. This is always in four-wheel drive. You can go high, low, whatever. There's 4 settings, but it's always in four-wheel drive. You got so much power, you don't have to worry about not having enough power to run four-wheel drive. There's no arguing that. Check it out. There's four-wheel drive automatic, four-wheel drive high, axle lock, so you're stuck in the snow, four-wheel drive low, launch modes. Baby's got technology in it, but the sound, even the graphics are cool. There's nothing quite like a Hellcat V8 engine with supercharger. Yes, it makes noise, but it's a nice noise. It's not overly aggressive like an obnoxious Ferrari backfiring. It's certainly music to my ears. Now, of course, it's a pickup truck, but it's got a full cab. You can easily fit 3 adults in the back. He's got the seat full back. Look at the room. Gigantic moonroof if you want one. Just realized with pickup wars in full flight here, they only made 702 units of the special TRXs, and they were sold in a few hours. And of course, with 702 horsepower, you can tow a lot. This thing's rated at 8,100 pounds, but I'm betting you can tow a lot more than that. It's got one serious military-looking rear end, fancy shocks in the back, too. And of course, if you want to win a pickup war battle, realize you're going to lose the gas mileage. These things get in the single digits if you're driving them in town. And if you drive them really hard, I've driven some really hard, and I got like 5 miles a gallon in town. So be prepared to spend money on gas if you want one of these beasts. Realize one thing, this may be the last of the dinosaurs, the last of the great V8 with superchargers, 702 horsepower. They're not making that many of them, and in the future they probably won't allow people to build things to get gas mileage like that. But if you want to get the last of the dinosaurs, be the last on your block to have the beast, you might think about buying one of these things. With all the modern conveniences, big old screen, you can look all around so we won't hit the lions at the end of the driveway. I particularly like the overhead view. That is so cool. Of course, it's a typical big pickup, especially with a 4x4. You're way high up in the air. And for a pickup truck, of course, it's a modern truck. With all that fancy suspension system by Bilstein, which is the top of the line shock and strut manufacturer, it really handles well for a pickup truck that's four-wheel drive that has a solid rear axle. You can hear that supercharged whine. Just cruising around, it actually has a very comfy ride, I do have to say. They're not like the old pickup trucks that jostle the fillings out of your teeth. So it's off to the country to take it for a spin. Listen to that supercharger whine. They're supposed to do that. Our little road test here. You can see I've been here before. Let's see what this 702 horsepower can do. Here comes the supercharger. I'm totally disappointed, but look. He's got it set on valet setting, so they can't drive it fast. If you own one of these and you're having somebody park it, put it on valet. We're gonna take it off that in a second. Look at all this technology. Well, we're gonna figure out how to turn it off. All this stuff on and off, but now we want to turn it off. So now we're gonna deactivate it. You pick your own code. Now it's deactivated. Now we can have some fun. Here we go with it turned on. Speed when you want it, a lot less speed when there's a valet, or perhaps your teenage son wants to drive it around. And if you don't tell him the code, he can't turn the valet off. The pickup battle today, this Hellcat 702 horsepower supercharged Ram, it's at the front of the pack right now. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.